Hi everyone, George here. I'm coming to you with another video about the guard's counterattack. The reason being is because my good friend Michael Power asked me a couple of profound questions and they deserve a good answer. So here you have the comment on the previous video. I have always leaned strongly to apply rules learned from latter scenarios back to previous, such as the guard's counterattack in classic squad leader. I've seen pushback to this form of play, arguing that victory conditions and scenario balance will be affected. From what I saw of the VCs in this AAR, it appears they are the same as those in TGC. I have no idea what TGC means. Oh, the guard's counterattack. I'm not used to speaking in abbreviated format. Since scenario 1, ASL S1, it's actually SA, allows for multi-level building floors along with some loss issues, and yet retain the same victory conditions, it appears the argument of applying the same ladder rules to an earlier scenario affecting the balance of a scenario is a bit diminished. Yes and no, and I'll explain why. The first premise, though, is that in classic squad leader, as you may or may not know, the game progressed with a series of gamettes. There was the basic game, which was squad leader, then came Cross of Iron, then came Crescendo of Doom, and lastly came GI Anvil of Victory. Now, as the games progressed from gamette to gamette, the rules introduced were more complex than the previous ones. As well, new notions were, new concepts were introduced. For example, in Crescendo of Doom, what happened was they introduced orchards. And in COI, what happened was they introduced more complicated armor factors. And you also had turret and hull armor factors. However, what they neglected to do is, for example, in Cross of Iron, when they introduced armor factors, they neglected to upgrade the armor factors of the American tanks that were introduced in the basic module. The long story short of that is that in the classic game, what happened was they were victims of their own success. Nobody anticipated that squad leader would be so popular on a global basis. In addition, when they started introducing more complex factors and rules, they became contradictory and sometimes in conflict with the previous ones. Now, I know Michael did an extraordinary job at consolidating the rules in the basic game and kept some sort of distinction between one module and the other. However, I find it much more easier to upgrade to advanced squad leader than to go through the expense of reacquiring all the basic modules up to GI Anvil of Victory. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with GI Anvil of Victory, when it first came out, it was subject to a lot of criticism because the rules were a bit strange. And in addition to that, the cost of acquiring that game met now, it's at least $295 US, way beyond my means, and say the least. And acquiring this rulebook is about $42. The actual big rulebook itself, about $90. And they consolidate everything. Everything has been streamlined, so you have fewer contradictions. So in terms of it staying at the squad leader level and introducing other rules that were introduced later on, you may have a problem. And not only in terms of rule contradictions, but also in terms of balance, because there's more to it than multi-level buildings and loss issues. I'll get there in a minute or so. But as well, if you want to research the balance of the scenarios in ASL Scenario Archive, you do see that over time, after several gameplays, I think the conclusion is that this scenario is balanced. Having said that, that there is a balance, there are profound differences between ASL, the ASL scenario, and the classic scenario. So here, in terms of statistics, you have, I believe, archive, record plays, Russian 73, German 71, and draw 3. So it's pretty much even. And according to the ROAR data, again, we're pretty even. So it should be a balanced scenario. So going on with what Michael said, and by the way, Michael has recently been released from the hospital, so I want to wish him the best of health so he can continue enjoying Squad Leader in all of its various forms. Stay well, and don't try to run so hard away from the harems that are chasing you, buddy. Take it easy. That sounds like the Eagles, a song from the Eagles. All right, I don't know how often you've played the Guards Counterattack. I've played it to my heart's content, and I also use it as a introductory scenario. But since then, I've more or less adopted retaking Verville in S1, but I suspect at least enough to comment on the issue. Well, that's what I'm doing here. I have a lot of rules having a detrimental effect on the balance. So, all right, as to my experience, well, let's just say it's been mostly solitary play. I have no confidence in assessing the balance of scenarios since I have no control in my subconscious. I have, as I did a long time ago in the red clay washes of North Georgia with plastic soldiers. Well, in terms of experience, I've played the Guards Counterattack to my heart's content, let's say. Yeah, I wouldn't say to a large extent. I'm not saying that I'm an authority on this compared to Michael. Michael's probably more of authority than I am. And that's why he has some very interesting questions. So in terms of the rules, they're profoundly different. I wouldn't be able to play it without so much inconsistencies without the ASL rulebook. Now here comes the second part of the big split, if you will, between classic and advanced. When we look at the map board, let's go visit the map board one more time. There you go. Let's go into detail with respect to the differences. Okay. In the classic game, right here, right there, okay, in this building here, instead of having a 9-0 commissar, you have an 8-0 leader. In addition, in the classic game, our rule of thumb was never to stack the leader with the squads, because if the 8-0 leader broke, each of those squads would have to take a leader loss morale check. Broken once, they break. Broken twice, they're eliminated. Whereas here in ASL, if the leader has the same morale as the multi-man counter, there is no effect. And they get the positive benefit by not cowering. If, for example, Berkey gets eliminated, which is highly unlikely, especially if he's in cover, the worst that could happen would be a leader loss task check, where the unit would be pinned, but would not suffer a leader loss morale check. So the other main difference about this area here is that Kornov, being a commissar, will increase the morale of these units, prevent them from breaking, prevent them from cowering, and he will drive the attack forward. That's one major difference between the classic game and what you see in ASL. So right off the bat, at least on this flank, the Russians are at an advantage. Okay, right. All right. Okay. The other thing that is profoundly different is with the LMGs or any MG, there is no penetration fire. If the unit wants to use his LMG to affect more than one hex, that unit must declare a fire lane along a hex grain. And it's at half firepower, what we call residual firepower. So that's another important difference, which between the classic penetration is devastating, whereas with a fire lane, it seems a bit more reasonable. Yeah. The other major difference here is that, as you can see, this hex is occupied with only 2 LMGs as opposed to 3. Okay. So that's above and beyond the rules pertaining to loss and second level. All right, now here's another very important, the second part of his question, which is very important. Okay. If the German opponent had started with a squad each in G6 and H6. So let's take a quick look at that. G6, and I think he meant H5. Okay, all right. Do you think that sort of setup would put a half-turn delay in the guard's assault in the open? Okay, let's go back to the map board. So what Michael is saying is, if I have a squad here and a squad there, okay, will it delay the Russian onslaught onto building F5? Every German player's worry is that this mass of Russians will simply sweep through that building and then exert pressure on him. And that's why the German player would set up here. Now, what most German players do is, if you permit me, I'm going to take this half squad out of here, put him as a full squad, take out the second level here. Okay, so what most German players do is they stack everybody here. So the Russian player has no opportunity to fire on any German squad. And what Michael has been saying is that, hey, let's do this. Now, I'm not sure if you would leave the LMG there, or you would put it there, okay, or even here. Now, I wouldn't recommend putting it there, but I would recommend putting it here. And that's one strategy that I have used, and it works. It works to the extent that the Russian will have to think twice before advancing into these hexes here. Because once they do, even if they declare assault fire, he exerts now 8 firepower factors down 1 against him, and he exerts 12, right? Now, let's say the Russian player says, okay, I'm not going to move, but I will fire before moving. So I'm going to declare prep fire. And as David Garvin likes to say, nothing good ever happens in prep fire. I'm going to prep fire and fire on him. That will delay my advance inevitably by half a turn. And why would I want to do that? Well, it buys time, okay? And time is of essence because you only have 5 player turns, right? It does buy time. Now, what if this squad is not eliminated, but it is broken, right? What happens then? Can he route back to the leader? Let's take a look. So he is 2 hexes away from there, and he wants to route back this way. All right, range 3. He routes back to here. Is he getting any closer? No, he's still at range 3. He goes here, now he's outside of out of the LOS, so he can route back, right? This is great. However, if the Russian player had a squad here, he would not be able to route back because he's going from 4 hexes to 3 to 3. So this guy's broken, he can route back, right? This guy's broken, he can still route back. And there's one guy under protection that inevitably can advance onto the support weapon had it been abandoned, right? Now, the important difference again, we come to another important difference again between squad leader, classic squad leader, and advanced squad leader is that in classic squad leader, that weapon would have been abandoned by the broken squad. In advanced squad leader, we have weapon possession, and you cannot abandon it if broken. Only the leader can grab it out, right? So he would have routed back with a support weapon, and you wouldn't, if you wanted to continue delaying or attempting to delay the Russian onslaught, you would have to advance a squad without a support weapon, provided it didn't start with a support weapon. Now, having said that, Mark's deployment wasn't bad at all. He had a half squad here. And that was kind of baiting the German, take it, right? Here he had deployment as well. I wouldn't have deployed. I would have had a whole squad here with an LMG, and with your first attack, you're bound to get a 6 down 1 or down 2, depending on the type of movement the Russian player chose to do, right? But, with luck, anything can turn out. Anything that seems to be a great idea can turn out to be a horrible idea if luck isn't with you. So luck also plays an important role. Now, I hope I answered Michael's questions. They were very profound questions. So I guess to sum up, major differences between Classic and ASL, I believe those differences do play a profound role in justifying to play the Classic game as it was intended and designed to be played, and to play ASL as it was intended and designed to play. Let's not mix oranges with apples and apples with oranges. And the second question with respect to, trying to bait the Russian player with a prep fire and delaying him with putting at least 2 squads out there in these 2 hexes is, in my opinion, a great move. I hope you also enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.